Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. The title of that webinar is The Road to Success, a story of 36% sales growth in year one with CRM and desking optimization. This afternoon's webinar is presented by Solera. My name is Brent Carmichael. I'm the Director of Education for NIAD and NIADA and have the pleasure of hosting this afternoon's webinar. The presenters this afternoon will be Clark Jackson from Solera and Josh Wilson from AutoSavvy. Real quick house cleaning before we get started. Up in the upper middle part of your screen, you will see a little icon that says Q&A. There will be time at the end of the webinar for your questions and answers with our presenters. So simply just click on that, type in your question, and when we come to the Q&A section, we'll get that to the presenters. So without further ado, Clark, take it away.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks for that introduction. Just want to start off by saying thank you to everyone here. It's the end of the month, end of the fiscal quarter, so this week is for sure one of the most crazy weeks of the year. So you guys taking the time to be here means a lot for us. I'm very excited to introduce Josh Wilson. Josh is the Senior Director of Retail Operations over at AutoSavvy. He's been a client of ours for a while, and Josh has been really pivotal and critically, he's been crucial in helping us expand their locations nationwide. So today we'll have a discussion with him. There will be a lot of tools we'll be discussing with talking about their success story and a lot of insights. And so we have some visuals that we'll present at the very end, right before the Q&A, that you guys can look over to kind of examine. So thanks, Josh. So how's it going?
Going all right. Thanks for having me. I did tell Clark before this meeting. I was like, hey, it's kind of the Super Bowl for car sales, so we'll see how many people join. But appreciate everyone jumping on.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, we really appreciate Josh too. You guys have a lot of locations, so this is a lot of time away from you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Josh? What do you do over there, over at AutoSavvy? What does it mean to be the Director of Retail Operations?
Yeah, so here at AutoSavvy, in my current role, I run all the retail operations for our dealership. So again, we have 20 stores in 10 different states, and so we're expanding quickly. We'll talk more about how we expanded and where we went and how we started from one dealership. But yeah, currently I run all the retail operations. So from anything from selling all the way to collecting the money and processing through titles. So that's my main focus, and I have a big group of big team below me that really help us be successful.
Yeah, you guys have a massive team over there. Tell us a little bit more about AutoSavvy. What's kind of different about AutoSavvy? How long you guys been around? How many locations you guys got? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we're a little unique of a dealership, right? So like I said, we have 20 stores in 10 different states. And if you look back, we've been expanding pretty heavily since about 2015. That's kind of when we kicked it off and really started expanding. But we've been aggressive. You think pre-COVID we were at I think 8 stores or 9 stores. And now we're up to 20 stores, and so we're growing at a quick pace. And one thing that we're unique, we're an independent dealership that I feel like operates a lot like an OEM dealership in size and technology. But we specialize in branded title vehicles, and so we're the nation's largest branded title dealership. And so these cars are cars that have gone through an insurance auction for some reason, and hail, theft, collision, for a variety of reasons. And we take them, fix them back up to AutoSavvy exacting standards, and sell them at great value to our customers. And because of the quality and what we've been able to design, we've been able to have great partners with financing institutions and other things that have allowed us to grow. And so that's kind of a little bit about AutoSavvy. It's a little uniqueness, and it also comes with some of the complexities of growth.
Yeah, to over 20 locations, that's incredible. And especially with what you guys do, it's such a unique kind of niche in the market. And so be able to grow with even that kind of niche that you guys do, it's absolutely incredible. When you guys decided to grow, Josh, what was that process look like at first? What were some of the first steps that you guys took in order to expand?
Yeah, no, that's so I've been with AutoSavvy since we were one store. So I started with us about 12, 13 years ago. And we were one store. And so we were still just this tiny independent trying to figure it out, right? And as independents do, we tried to save ourselves into a profit, right? We were very big on we had cheap CRM, cheap DMS, cheap everything because we were running on a shoestring budget. And so, when we really started looking to expand, and it's like, how do we grow? And our first dealership we added was a dealership that was only, 40 minutes from our headquarters dealership. So it was still close. It was, it was calculated. It was a small dealership, small lot, low rent payment. So if it didn't work, we weren't sunk in a big lease or anything like that. But when we did that, when we grew, we found some issues, right? We found some issues right off the get-go when we're trying to grow, and the big realization is a lot of times your dealerships are successful because there's an owner there, GM, or there's some really high-powered people that help run that. And as you continue to grow, it's harder to have that, and your best people, they get diluted a little bit, right? And it's a little harder to manage and just expect things to be done. And so the first thing we had to do is really find out how can we help and how can we really help start tracking our progress in our sales and how I always say we're a data company wrapped as a used car sales dealership. And so we're very heavy in data. And so how can we track and how can we help our sales guys be the most efficient and effective? How can we make sure our sales guys are doing what they're told, right? How can we make sure they're making their calls, their texts, their emails, doing their follow-up? How can we make sure we're desking correctly? How can we make sure we're not losing opportunities that we shouldn't lose, that we're contacting all of our customers? And that's really what we didn't have. And that, again, that kind of led into the partnership with Dealer Socket that we started in 2015, was because that was kind of the first thing we had to solve, right? To grow, sales solves everything. I always say that sales solves everything. And so we tried to be so cheap, and I think Dealer Socket did a great job at a price point for an independent. They allow us to still have a robust CRM system, but not so expensive that you can't afford it.
I love what you said there, that you guys are like a data company disguised as a dealership company. I love that. That's a great way to look at it. You've
Yeah, I
been with
mean,
us.
I was gonna say my background's accounting and marketing. That's what I went to get my degrees in. So yeah, I'm all about. And our co-founder was a statistician, so it's all about stats and numbers. That's for sure.
Yeah, so you guys have been with us since 2015. And you kind of already highlighted a little bit of how the CRM helped out. I've been with you for the last 2 years as you guys' CSM and seen a lot how you guys use the CRM. When you first started out there, what was so important about using a CRM like ours to really expand and get to the place that you are right now?
Like I said, it really came down to, you have some really good people, but a lot of times, you find those people that can help you expand, but you only have so many of them. And so, I won't lie, I started with AutoSavvy. Actually moved and opened up the dealerships. And we'll talk a little bit about the fun of that is. But again, the CRM is vital, I think, to have a good CRM and make sure it's set up correctly. And that's what I notice a lot when I look at other dealerships or I look at some other stuff. I see they're using the CRM, but they're using 10% of it. You know what I mean? And that was the
Yeah.
biggest thing is I think a lot of us and a lot of car dealerships and myself, we all have an ego, right? And we all think we're right. And I think that was the biggest thing is checking the ego at the door and reaching out to Solera, reach out to other, we brought in some consultants. We brought in a lot of people to say, how can we maximize the use of Dealer Socket or the CRM and get the most data out of it that we can to help us make the best decisions we need to? Because too often we make decisions off feel and not off data. And when we do that, a lot of times we make the wrong decision because especially as you're expanding and you have multiple rooftops, you can't be there every day. So you don't know what's going on. But if you have a robust CRM that's set up correctly, you can be there every day without being there every day. You can see how many phone calls, what your team's doing, how's the follow-up, who did they desk yesterday, how did they desk that deal. I think that's super important to have that clear line of sight.
Yeah. That's the when you were talking about expanding for the very first time, you were talking we've talked about this before. But what were some of those like first obstacles that you guys ran into when you first started to grow? What were, how did the CRM kind of help overcome some of those roadblocks in the very beginning?
Yeah, no, for sure. Expanding's tough, especially when you're a branded title dealership that every state has a different rule around branded titles. Every lender has different rules. It's tough. It makes it difficult. It's difficult for clean tiles, and I think for brand tiles, it makes it tenfold. And that's really, it took us being in business for 10, 12 years before we decided to expand because you had to build up all those processes and procedures. And so, and then also as an independent, I know we're partnering with NIADA on this. And a lot of times independents, like we don't have that manufacturer money behind us. We don't have all that capital behind us. I still remember our first store we did out of state in Colorado Springs. We had no money, and we go out there and we find this rundown bar, and we decided that's going to be our dealership, right? And the owner at the time was like, Josh, here you go. We need to pay for the renovation. So we put a little trailer out in the front, and we sold cars out of a trailer, and we had no power to it. And so I'd have to show up 2 hours before we opened to hit the generator just so it could get warm enough for us to turn on our computers. That's how cold it was in Colorado Springs. We had to warm it up just to get our computers on. And would run. I ran as kind of the kind of the general contractor working with all the subs to try to get the remodeling done. And again, it's just finding that right team. And so there's all in independence, it's all about how do I grow and how do I get going. But again, you don't have all the resources that like an OEM or a franchise dealership has that has the backing and the money to make life easy. A lot of times you have to do things on a shoestring budget. And that's where I think the CRM comes in is, having a strong CRM and having those tools allowed us to put someone into those dealerships when we're expanding that could be successful, right? It's like, so often you put, I think about construction all the time, and we put people out and they're working on houses, and, it takes them twice as long. Someone comes around with a nail gun and they can finish a house framing in half the time as someone with just a hammer, right? It's about having the right tools to be the most effective. And so I think the big thing is having that's what really helped us with Dealer Socket. And I think, I put our Dealer Socket against anyone in the country because I think we are very, we're very in depth, and we really dive into Dealer Socket a lot, and we live in there. But having that set up and having that set up correctly, when we put someone in a new dealership, when we're expanding, they're set up to succeed. Now they just have to do it, right? They just have to follow the process, procedures, but the system's going to help them, guide them so they don't fail. It's going to give them the roadmap. But if you don't have that, how do you expect to expand? And how do you expect that guy that you plugged in to be successful?
It's really interesting. I'm over a lot of the other independent groups like yourselves, right? And just like you said, you guys use the CRM so effectively. A lot of the other groups I use, they use it pretty well as well. That's how they're going to be able to expand. But you guys use it in a whole other sense. And you guys are using a lot of the back-end features. There's just so many features that you guys are able to, exploit and to actually use that other people don't. And so I love that about having to work with you guys for so long. Now with you have all these locations, right? What's your day-to-day look like overseeing these operations, and how does the CRM actually help with your day-to-day on that?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great question. And I want to go back to what you said prior is what's been great is we use the CRM, but what's been great about working with you and stuff is a lot of times we have to tailor that a little bit to be independent, or how our business model, because we run our business a little different than a lot of other dealerships do just because of our nature of our business. And Dealer Socket and Solera has always been great to work with us to kind of customize it. Again, you can customize it only to a certain extent, but trying to find a way to where you can better utilize it. And that's what I always say is it never hurts to ask. And I think so often we look at the tool and we look at our CRM and we look at our other stuff and we're happy with just how it is. And we just accept accept that instead of saying, hey, I'd really like it if it does this. Let's ask, let's find out. And maybe it won't do it exactly how you want to do it, but maybe there's a workaround to do it. And I think that's a big thing to always ask what we're doing. But as of my job now, unfortunately, I don't get I always tell people my biggest excitement is being on the floor, selling customers, getting that excitement, getting that high. But unfortunately, I sit most of the time in the back of the office. And my job is to, watch and make sure we're kind of, my big thing is I kind of say, hey, I'm watching the train go down the tracks and I'm making sure it doesn't get wobbly on us and the train derails, right? I'm trying to watch it and catch it when it starts wobbling a little bit. And so I'm big into analytics. And so I'm constantly looking at, and that's why I like, dealer socket a little bit as well, especially with 20 rooftops, is because the widgets that you can create, right? If you're on dealer socket and you haven't used the widgets or vice versa, the widgets are very powerful. They're things that you can craft. I can craft the widget exactly how I want it. I can have it show me the task completed for the last 5 days and create all those different those different widgets to kind of get done. For me, dashboards are huge. So instead of me having to log into 20 different rooftops, I can create a dashboard with a widget that touches all my 20 rooftops. So I'm logged into one dealership, but I can see all the phone calls all 20 stores are making. I can see all the appointments for all 20 stores on one page. I can see all the demos of all 20 dealerships on one page. I can get all that reporting. I can see all the tasks being completed by sales guys on one page. I make multiple dashboards. I have tons of dashboards, 10 to 15 dashboards that I use. I can have my save a deal dashboard where I'm looking at all the business from the prior day saying, hey, why did we miss deals? And I'm going through that, making sure we're putting notes in it. And again, with dealer sockets, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So it's also training our team to make sure that we're leaving proper stuff, but also that, inspect what you expect, right? If I don't inspect the notes and expect what's going on, the team's just going to do what they want to do. But them knowing I'm going to look at it, that, hey, in my position, I'm going to send a message down to one of the stores and one of the sales guys I communicate with them all the time saying, hey, what happened to this customer yesterday? I have no notes. I'd love to know. You know what I mean? And it's important to know that, hey, they're being watched out and that they're putting notes out there. But then, there's so much more that I use and our team uses. I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of reports inside of, the CRM. I know I'm talking a lot about the CRM, but one thing I love about DealerStock is a lot of reports you can schedule emails on. And so we have it where, daily KPIs or the analytics or the store analytics, we have it set where it hits the GM box, email box every morning. And their job is to open that up. So they don't even have to go looking for the report. I create the report and send it right to them. Well, Dealer Socket creates that. I don't. But again, it's just having all that right there for them to process. And again, kind of like you said, giving them the roadmap to be successful. But then also, I would say, tying a lot of things together.
Yeah, I think you touched up on something that's pretty important. I think CRM is for accountability, right? And you talked about that a lot, where you're able to follow up on the notes that these individuals. And one thing I love working about with you, Josh, is I get to see all your dashboards, and truly you have a lot of dashboards, which is fantastic. And you do it so creatively where you're able to split it up by region. Sometimes you do it so you can see all the locations, but it just really, to me, for what you guys' operation is, you utilize it perfectly. It's definitely a masterclass just looking at some of the things that you created in there. And then you also talked about reports, which I think are critical. When it comes to accountability, right? It's important to be able to say, hey, you have all these GMs at every location, to send those reports and say, hey, look at this. What can we do better? What can we improve on? Where have we already gotten better, and how can we continue that growth? And so you've definitely been able to show me even a lot in the CRM that I've been impressed about. So, along with, you mentioned the dashboard, you mentioned analytics. You guys also use desking, right? And analytics. What those tools specifically, how have those helped you in some of those operations?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll take one step back. I do want to mention one thing I mentioned that might be good for the group, right? You talked a lot about accountability and holding your team accountable. I think there's two ways to hold the team accountable, right? Carrot or the stick. And one thing that we've done recently that we feel like is made a game changing for us is we've tied, we don't make it a takeaway from the salespeople, but we've made it where a sales associate can graduate to senior or master sales associate And a lot of it's depending on their activity inside the dealer socket. And so, making sure you handle the dealer socket checkouts. And so we have to say, hey, you have to have 80% green checkouts and a couple other metrics that go along with it. But again, and if you do that, hey, I'm going to give you an extra 0.5% on your gross of all your pay, or I'm going to give you an extra % of gross on all your pay. And what we found with this is it's given a little more of the why behind for the sales associate saying, and then also we know if they do those things, they're going to be successful because it's been proven. Hey, here's when we set specific measurements on what it takes to get green checkout. If there's no ambiguity in there, is this. If you sell a car, it passes this one. It's very clear cut, and so there's no ambiguity. And we found that when we do that and we tied it, we did that about a year ago, and we found once we tied that together, we found all of our sales guys just. They were, instead of us having to hassle them to do their stuff, they did it. And then, if they're, hey, I want more pay, it's like, hey, this is how you do it. It's going to sell you more cars, also get you more percentage on your growth. So just, when you said accountability, that sprung up in my head and thought that would be a good thing to talk about. But we do use desking. We do use analytics very heavily in the dealership. We love desking inside dealer socket for a couple of reasons, right? It allows with desking inside dealer socket, anytime you desk or you print out something, it leaves notes of exactly what happened. Doesn't make sense. So I can go, I have a team member that was desking that deal the day before and say something happened with them. They got hit by a bus where I can't talk to them at all or whatever. And that customer comes in the next day. I don't have to worry that I don't know what's going on. I can go back in and I can read the notes and I can also see how we got here. And I say, okay, we started here, we started at 13 on their trade. We went to 13.2, then we went to 13.4, and then we stuck there. I can see exactly. So when the customer comes back in and says, hey, he offered me $15,000 for his trade at the end, and I can go back in there and be like, no, it looks like he was at 13.4 to finish up, right? It allows that slick communication. But also, so we're not negotiating against ourselves, because that happens all the time, right? A manager's off, and then the customer comes in the next day with a different manager and starts putting words in other managers' mouths, and you start negotiating against yourself. And so having that clear cut and all those notes in there, we think is very vital. But also what it does is it helps us with a compliance standpoint. The bigger you get, the more target you get on your back for compliance, and we've prided ourselves on always having complete compliance with our dealer group, and dealer socket desking helps us. So when they come in, they're saying, hey, are you packing payments? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? We can show exactly what we're showing the customer, how we're getting there. And we desk a little different, and that's what I love about dealer socket is not everyone likes to be desked the same way. Everyone has a little different structure to it. And the tool inside dealer socket is super customizable. If I just want to show payments, if I want to show payments and the deal structure, if I just want to show the deal structure, if I want to give them 3 down payments, or if I want to give them 3 terms or 4 terms, or, you can really start customizing that towards the customer, which we feel like it helps us in the closing aspect when we're closing customers. And so that's a big thing for desking. Now, at analytics, like you said, we talked about analytics, desking analytics. Analytics is where I live, right? It shows all 20 dealerships, how I'm doing against 20 dealerships, and I can compare them side by side. I can compare, demo to write-up status, right up to, demo to write-up, right up to finance, contact to store visit, appointment confirmed to store visit. I can compare all these stats, because not every dealership's missing it in the same way. And this is why I feel like a lot of times we always go off feeling it in the car industry. We want to go off feeling instead of going off data and saying, hey, instead of hitting the whole dealership with a sledgehammer and telling everyone they suck, it's really diving in there and looking at it and saying, hey, this sales associate really is struggling with demo to write-up status. I got to work on that transitional statement with them. Oh, this sales guy is really struggling from contact to store visit. I need to start listening to his phone calls. Is he giving too much information or not enough information? Is he selling the car? Is he selling the appointment? I can really start to dive into, and then I'm more surgical in my approach with my team, instead of just being, I'm going to wreck this whole house and start over from the start. And we all know that takes forever to rebuild. Anyone done a remodeling job, it's tough, right? And so we use analytics really heavily. And what's nice about analytics is also, on the analytic page, if you don't have it, dealer socket already like yellow, green, and red highlights it for you. So, based on all the stores they're in, what's good and what's bad. So you got your store, but then also you see, hey, it's red. That's telling you dealer socket says that's low compared to everyone else that's on their platform. And so it even gives you a little more insight into those aspects as well. So it makes it very user friendly.
I love that. I've done a lot of I've been a lot of the new locations you guys open up. I try to go out there and do some training with them. And one of the things I've been impressed about when it comes to desking is your F&I managers. They already know. I mean, you guys already have your own training for that because you guys, try to keep everything very basically it's systematic, right? As you said earlier, where all of your F&I managers, they can customize it, but then you guys have procedures on AutoSavvy's back end of like, hey, this is how we want a desk, and all your F&I managers on the same page of that. And so that's something that as I've learned from you, just going to those locations, sitting down with those managers and being very impressed on how they do that. So great job on that, Josh.
Yeah,
and then analytics too. What was that?
Yeah, sorry, kind of leaning into that. I apologize, but yeah, that's we want anyone to walk into our 20 stores and feel like it's the same experience at any 20 store. And also, I want to be able to take any manager from any of my 20 stores and pop them in another store, and it's like they're just plug and play because it's the same process, procedures across the platform.
Yeah. And you guys being across a lot of states, obviously there's a lot more room for you to grow. I mean, how many more locations do you guys plan on opening up here soon?
We believe we're going to continue to expand aggressively. We have one dealership that we have opening up here in the next 45 days that we'll work on launching down in Texas. And we want 3 more before the end of the year. So our goal is 3 to 4 every year for the next couple of years. Because we feel like our last 3 store openings have been highly successful. All those stores have been profitable in their second month. So the first month we're not even a full month, and then the second month every store's hit profitability. And so we're seeing great success in most launches.
That's amazing. I love that I get to be part of that and watch you guys grow, and it's been fantastic. I mean, I'm really impressed, Josh, about just everything you guys have done. And I'm glad that we as a CRM company, as Dealer Socket Solera, can be able to actually help and provide some tools and resources in that growth process. So thanks for letting us do that. We have some time for some Q&A. We're going to send out, because we had a lot of conversation about some of the tools within the CRM, we're going to send out a deck of some screenshots, what that looks like. So we're going to send that out here so you guys can look at that. But I'm going to turn the time over to Brent for the Q&A portion.
Awesome job, guys. Awesome job. Great information there. Got quite a few questions, but again, you guys did such a great job of covering some of that information. A lot of these you've kind of answered a little bit. I did get a request that if they could see some screenshots of different dashboards and reporting that, Josh, that you're leveraging. So is that something we can throw up real quick?
Yeah, Ryan, do we have that? Or do you want to share a screen and do that way, Brett? Oh, there we go. You can pull that up there. Yeah.
So I think
talk us through it a little bit, Josh, on kind of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because we're seeing it on the presenter view, but you can kind of see on here. I think this is the left side. I think he's coming back, but you'll see that I've made different widgets for each store based off of what's going on, right? So it's so difficult sometimes when you're looking multiple rooftops, and it's perfect right here. So you can see that all the drop down, those are all my, on the first screen, you can see that's kind of all my my different dashboards. And you can see right here, this has a kind of a view that I can see, hey, all my turns, this one's contacted store visits, demo, write-up, F&I, and loss. And so I can see that from every single store at a moment's glance. So I can dive into that. I can look exactly where we are, and I put alerts on my phone to check these dashboards. So I have alarms that go off on my phone because so often we get so busy, and guess what? We get busy doing stuff that doesn't really help us sell cars. One of my good friends that, is in the business with us, he always asks, is what you're doing right now help you sell cars? And so often I think in the car business, we get pulled and we get tracked. And so I have alerts that all constantly tell me to go back and check these. The other one is, untouched web leads. I have this one up all the time. Hey, I'm watching the stores, making sure we're getting in touch with those web leads. We're clearing those out all the time. I think my stores get worn out on me because I'll just send a screenshot of it and say, hey, you got 4 untouched web leads. Where are we at? They're 20 minutes old. You know what I mean? And so constantly watching that. And what I found is, there's, you don't want them to feel like they're being micromanaged, but they need to know that it's being watched. And when you have that feeling and that accountability, it really helps them. And I think they're going to post more of those in the chat after. But yeah, the dashboards are huge. And even if you only have one store, right? I think so often we have the standard manager dashboard that DealerSocket does such a good job at. But even if you have one store, so when I was a GM of just one store, when I started and I was moving around, opening up locations, I still had multiple dashboards depending on what I wanted to look at. I think the standard manager dashboard is a great dashboard, but it's more of a high level overview of the whole store. Hey, no, I need to have a dashboard that's just my lost leads. And so it has like all my lost people, has what categories they're in, a list of them. So, hey, I'm behind. It's, the 25th of the month, I'm behind. I need to sell more cars. And I drop my dashboard down to the lost and it has all my lost stuff. And I don't have to go searching all these different reports. And I'm just starting to bang out phone calls to get customers in. So I think it's really important that even if you have one dealership, and you're on DealerSocket, I would say it's very vital for you to make multiple dashboards. And if you don't know how to do it, Clark is a rock star at it, and I'm sure your CSM knows how to do it. But it's very important because it's too long for me to go pick all these pieces and save them and all this stuff. Put them on one dashboard. I can be there in a second and I can pull up whatever information I want.
We did a conference with you guys at the GM conference. We had all your GMs there in Park City. Yeah. And that was one of the things that I did. I just trained them on how to create those filters and the widgets, and we helped them create a couple little dashboards that they could use. So it's not just for someone that Josh's level. Obviously, Josh is at this high level, but your GMs, your store managers, they can all have customizable dashboards, and they should. And so it's just about being smart about and strategic about which criteria, which things you're looking for. Obviously, AutoSavvy knows what they're looking for. They created those already. And so it's being familiar with what you need. And so, yeah. Okay.
I'm from Kentucky, so you got to kind of explain the whole widget thing there. You threw me off with that. In Kentucky, a widget could be anything from a screwdriver to a wrench. So I'm assuming that's not what we're talking about here, right? Something a little bit different. Real quick, though. It looks like that was a lot of work. Now, again, I'm kind of fat and lazy guy. So again, all of that there, I mean, seriously, Josh, how long did it take you to create these dashboards, these widgets in there? Was this like a 6-month process, or is it a pretty easy thing, let's say, for the common man to do?
That's a great question. I would say your first one when you're learning might take you maybe an hour or two. You know what I mean? But most of the time, once you know what you're looking for, you can create a dashboard in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? That's how easy DealerSocket makes it. And a widget, like you said, I think it's kind of common. It's like that's what I love about the new Blackbird version of DealerSocket. I won't lie, I used to be on the original version of DealerSocket. When they switched to Blackbird, I was pissed because I just learned the original version. I wasn't happy about it. I was one of the last ones to switch over. But the one thing I do love about the new Blackbird, it works more like a phone where you're putting different apps and you're moving it around. It's a little more smart in that aspect. But what I'm going to say is the dashboards are super easy. I'd say the first one when you're learning and saying, hey, where am I going? And that's the biggest thing is they have some pre-widgets for you, and then you can make your own with task list and stuff like that. I would say go play with that. Open every single one of them, because I know sometimes I found a widget on there that I'm like, oh, I've never looked at this one before, right? So what I went and did is I added them all, and then I found out what ones I liked, and then I made my dashboards off that and kind of my task list. But what I would say is if it's your first time, reach out to your CSM or Clark's awesome at it. I don't know, I'm throwing a lot on him, but they can kind of walk you through that first one. But after that, like you said, I can create a dashboard for all 20 stores in 10 minutes, right? It's not that long. I just need to know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, we have a wonderful customer success management team. I know a couple of them are on here today, and so we sit down and we do trainings with our clients all the time. That's just something that we do. We help create dashboards, little widgets, help with the back end with campaigns and business rules and a lot of other features. So it's that's a great resource. We also have a lot of training videos in the CRM that for like new sales reps, for sales managers, a lot of material, and then our support as well. So.
Okay. Kind of a follow-up, but you kind of touched on this, and I've got more than one question came across in the same vein. It's like, how do you get salespeople to update the CRM? And you mentioned you have some sort of a, not tied to pay plan, but kind of tied to pay plan. Could you kind of go over that real quick for us again?
Yeah, so for the first thing we hold on the CRM is if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. And so if you say you called that customer and it's not logged in the CRM, you didn't call that customer. You say you text that customer and it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. It's a free lead. And so that's the first thing we've laid down all within AutoSavvy. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? If it's in the CRM, it happened. If it didn't, it did not happen. So don't come to me and say you made 60 phone calls today when the CRM's telling me you made 30 phone calls, right? And that's kind of what we kind of land on. But we tied, I think the biggest tool you can use within DealerSocket is the checkout on DealerSocket. I think it's very handy. It's a nice little snapshot. What it does, it shows you all the activity your salesperson did, on the phones, emails, texts, all that stuff. And then it shows you all the stuff that they did in store visits, demos, write-ups, F&I. And then it shows you all their tasks that they have to do. Hey, how many tasks do they have left to do? Did they complete all their tasks for the day? Because if you set the right business rules and campaigns, it'll kind of set you up for success. And so we make sure all those tasks are completed before they leave for the day. Then also, how many leads and all that stuff. And so we require a checkout before they leave every day. We say, hey, these checkouts are open an hour to a half hour before you leave, but you have to do a checkout before you leave. And then, like you said, we didn't make it part of their pay plan. We made it a bonus, right? And so I think sometimes when they feel like it's part of their pay plan, they're like, oh, they're making us do this. They're making this, and they feel a little entitled to it. And so what we found that worked best for us is to make it so, hey, our senior sales associate, and we're growing, so it helps us because we're saying, hey, we promote from our senior and master sales associates, and we promote from within pretty heavily. I promoted, I think, 6 salespeople in the last 6 months up into manager positions, right? So we promote from within quite heavily. But we say we promote from the senior and master sales associates, because how are you supposed to be a manager if you can't run your own CRM? And so we use that. And so we say, hey, if you do everything, you get your green checkouts. And there's a couple other items like that we use that go into that with car sales, reviews, other items that go into that. But we're saying, hey, if you hold that for 3 months, you move up to a senior sales associate. You get new shirts, you get 0.5% better on your on your commission, you get preferred scheduling. And then, hey, you do that and you go to another level, you become a master sales associate, which you get another 0.5%, another, a bunch of other items. And so we found that when we did that, we got a lot better reception from the sales associate about leaving notes, about updating the CRM, because they felt like, hey, I'm doing this so I can get more money, instead of just I'm doing it because it's part of my job. Saying, hey, that's how salespeople work. They only want to do stuff if it's going to benefit them. And so we just structured it in a way that it's going to benefit them.
Right. Whip them, right? What's in it for me? Great stuff,
Yep.
Man. Great stuff. Excuse me, kind of along that same vein, I got a question about what your top 3 to 5 metrics that you're looking at, Josh, either daily, weekly, monthly, whatever that is. Because again, very impressive dashboards, very impressive widgets and things that you have there, but it was a lot of information. So if we had to kind of narrow that down, what would you say your top 3 or 5 are that mean the most to AutoSavvy?
So that's a great question. That's a good one. I'll try and nail it. But I always start top of the funnel and work my way down, right? So my first prospect, the first one I really pay attention to is prospect with contact percentage. So this tells me, hey, everyone that's come into my system, how well am I getting in contact? And we say contact is 2-way communication. Hey, I've had 2-way communication with that customer. Either I've texted them and they text me back, phone call and they've talked to me, or email and they've emailed me back. And so that's my first one I start out with every time. Because if we're doing proper follow-up and we're doing the things that we should be doing, text, call, email, giving them all areas, I should see my prospects with contact percentage. And it's pretty blaring. It's crazy that I can see that when I'm looking into a store that's struggling. Most of the time, this is where they're struggling. They're not making their phone calls, their texts, their emails. And that's kind of starts the funnel. So prospect with contact percentage is probably my first one. The next one that I really look at is appointments created percentage. So how many appointments are we creating off the prospects that we have, and how well are we doing on the phone? So again, you'll see that I'm looking for, hey, what are gaps we're utilizing? Hey, am I not following up? Contact the appointment status. Hey, are we not saying the right things on the phone to get the appointment? Are we trying to sell the car over the phone instead of just selling the appointment? And that's a big thing. Next thing I'd look at is, and this kind of takes into account appointment show ratio, but I look at really heavily is prospects with store visit percentage. So how well are, now I've looked at prospects with contact to appointment. How well are we getting them into the store? Are we getting them into the store? And then the last one I would say is store visit sold, right? That's, and if store visit sold's low, then that tells me, hey, I might need to go look at demo to write-up status, write up to finance. Where am I losing my customers? But I look at store visits. So you can kind of see I kind of try to address the 4 reasons, and then I dive in deeper into whatever one's low. Out of those 4, hey, what one's low, what one's off? And then I dive in and I kind of find the root cause of it and say, hey, where are we going with that? And kind of how can we make the adjustment to be more successful? And so those are kind of the ones that I would say are, my hot buttons that I look at.
Okay, now give us a peek behind the curtain. What is acceptable for AutoSavvy for those 4 metrics then? What am I looking for in that prospect to contact rate in those numbers? What's good for AutoSavvy?
Yeah, that's yeah, I get a little peek right there, right? Prospect to contact percentage, we're mostly looking like 70 to 80%. Our goal is to get 70 to 80% of prospects to contact percentage. I'd say we've had stores hit in the high 80s before. We've had stores hit as low as 50, 60, right? So we're looking at 70, 80%. Prospects with store visits, we're really trying to drive that up. That's a big focus that we have currently, because I think that's our biggest area of opportunity. Currently, we sit around 34, 35%. We need to get up at around 40%. So, hey, those people that we're getting contact with, how do I get them into the store? 40, 50%, selling the appointment. And then visit sold percentage. This one's the one I always get mad about. Sorry. Mad about is because I feel like sometimes they don't log their store visits, and that's what the checkout's supposed to do, is make sure we log in our store visits. But store visits with sold, we sit around 45%. So again, that's the number I really hammer on our managers. So it's about 1 in every 2 customers that come in, we sell them a car. We overcome the brand title objection, we sell them a car, get them financed, and get them taken care of. But to me, a store visit percentage is one that I really kind of dive into, and I believe that's a manager stat. I believe all the other ones are on the salespeople, but if the salespeople get them into the store, it's on the manager to make sure they sell a car. So if I see a low store visit sold percentage, that has me starting to question my management team and how involved they are on the sales floor.
Okay, great. Have one here, a little bit specific. How does your titling team use Dealer Socket for handling vehicle titles? What steps are involved from sale to title processing, and which parts your team manages directly in the system?
Okay, that's a great question. We don't use our titling team. We used to use Dealer Socket, and we used to keep notes in Dealer Socket so the sales associate could see, and if a customer called and said, "Hey, where's my plates?" or whatever, they could get the notes from Dealer Socket. Currently, I want to say our titling team doesn't use Dealer Socket because we created our own titling app that processes it. And so it goes into Dealer Socket via API and pulls all the information out of Dealer Socket and dumps it into a titling app where we process and track our titles. But that's kind of how we're set up right now. But really, we use Dealer Socket mostly just for the customer information, any notes on, hey, where do they want titles sent? Because the sales guy will put it in here, hey, they're out of town for 2 months, send it here, or they want sent somewhere else. But before we made that transition and the investment, it's a heavy investment, it's not cheap to do. Before we used Dealer Socket, we'd keep notes in there, and so the sales guy could be on the loop on what's going on.
Great stuff, guys. It looks like we're coming up pretty much to the end of this.
Yeah.
Clark, let me turn to you for any final thoughts before we end our webinar this afternoon.
I just want to say thanks so much again to Josh for doing this. Like, we've already established crazy time of the year, and someone in his position be able to take the time to sit down and do this for everyone. I really hope that everyone was able to get as much as I've gotten out of this. So thank you so much, Josh. We like I said, I'm a customer success manager over a whole group, a lot of the independent group space. And Josh and his team have done it so well. But one of the unique things about DealerSocket, it's a differentiator between us and most of the CRMs out there. We actually have customer success managers for not just franchise dealerships, but we have it for all independent dealerships, no matter what size. And that's a big differentiator between us and our competitors. And Josh has been able to see that since the beginning until now. We've helped him. We've been part of that process from the beginning till now. So that's something that we want to be able to let everyone know. Also, Brian, just let me know, we're going to be including those slides that you just saw that Brent was just showing in an email. So we're not able to attach that in the meeting, but we will send it in a follow-up email. So if anyone has any questions or anyone wants to look at those, they can. Great. Appreciate that, Clark. Josh, any final thoughts from you?
No, I just appreciate having me on, guys. I hope I help anyone. Like I said, I'm more than happy. It's all about raising all. I'm a big believer that a rising tide raises all boats, right? And so we're all trying to make it out here in this auto industry, and there's enough to go around for everyone. But I can tell you, I'll give a big shout out to Clark. He's been our CSM for like the last 2 years, and I would say, DealerSocket's gone through stages where we didn't have one, and we did. And I can tell you, Clark is amazing. And if you have a CSM that you're on DealerSocket, don't be afraid to utilize them, because I can tell you, I feel like I was pretty good with the system, but I hit Clark and I say, hey, what about this? And he's like, this is how you do it. And I'm like, I didn't even think it was possible, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Thanks, well, and again, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you both are. Thank you to all of the attendees out there. Great questions that were submitted. Again, Clark Jackson with Solera, Josh Wilson, AutoSavvy. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Again, all attendees out there, thank you as well. Hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Brent.
Thanks.
See ya.